I have told this story only twice in my life. Once to my husband. Once to my daughter. Now I am writing it down because I am 89 years old and my hands are still here, and the man who made that possible is somewhere in the world, or under it, and he never heard me say thank you. So, let me start where it started. France, November 1943. My mother was dying. Not slowly, the way people die in beds with family around them. The other kind. The kind where you watch someone trying to hold themselves together with nothing left to hold with, and you are 11 years old and you don't know what to do except hold their hand and pretend you are not terrified. We had been hiding in a collapsed farmhouse for 4 days, one wall standing, part of a roof, the smell of old hay and ash underneath. She had been hit by shrapnel 3 nights before, during the chaos that took everything else from us. I won't describe what we lost. Some things I've spent 78 years not describing, and I won't start now. What matters, we were alone. The wound was infected. She had a fever that made her eyes distant and strange. She looked at me and tried to smile, and the smile was the most frightening thing I had ever seen. I just need to rest, she kept saying. She had been saying it for 2 days. On the afternoon of the 4th day she sat down against the wall and did not get back up. That was when I heard the boots. One man. Moving slowly. I had learned, by then, to read boots. The number of men, the weight, the pace. These were the boots of someone exhausted, not the deliberate sweep of a search patrol, but something slower, more private. I pressed myself against the wall beside my mother. She was half conscious. We couldn't run. There was nowhere to go. So I waited. The shape filled the doorway. Gray-green uniform. German. Young 20, maybe 22, thin in the way everyone was thin by 1943, with a cut above his right eyebrow dried dark. Rifle on his back. He saw us immediately. And he raised the rifle. I want to describe that moment accurately because I owe it to him to be accurate. He raised the rifle and he pointed it at us, and for 5 seconds I counted them, the way you count things when your mind has nothing else to hold onto. He stood completely still. My mother made a small sound. Not pain. Something smaller. Something that was almost nothing. His eyes moved to her arm. The rifle stayed up. I looked at him. I don't know why I didn't close my eyes. I think I had made some 11-year-old decision that if this was the end I would face it, that I owed my mother that much to not look away. So I looked directly at him and I watched his face do something I still cannot fully describe. Something cracked in it. Not broke, cracked. Like a stone wall when the frost gets into it. From the outside everything holds, but inside something has shifted that cannot shift back. He lowered the rifle. He stood there for a very long time, not moving, looking at my mother, and I understood that he was fighting something, some internal war between the man his uniform required him to be and whatever he was underneath it. And I understood, with the absolute clarity that only extreme fear produces, that the outcome of that war was not certain. Then he reached into his pack. I flinched so violently I hit my head against the wall. He stopped. Looked at me. Held up one hand slowly, deliberately, palm open. Wait. And then, carefully, Moving as though every gesture was a word in a language he was hoping I could read, he reached in again and brought out a piece of bread. He set it on the ground between us. Looked away. I looked at the bread. I looked at him. I looked at my mother. I took the bread. He came back the next morning. And the morning after. He brought what he had: thin broth, hard biscuits, once a small tin of something I still don't know the name of that was the most extraordinary thing I have ever eaten. He cleaned my mother's wound with the last of his medical supplies, carefully, wincing when she winced as though the pain moved through his hands into him. He used things he might need for himself. He never explained why. We had no shared language. I spoke no German, he spoke no French. Everything between us was bread and silence and the careful grammar of hands. Once he tried to tell me his name. He pointed at himself and said it one word, maybe two, something soft at the beginning, and I was frightened and the sound went past me before I could catch it, and then the moment was gone. I have never forgiven myself for that. The 8th day. My mother's fever broke on the 6th morning. I woke to find her cool, breathing normally, actually sleeping. I put my hand on her forehead and I pressed my face into the blanket and I cried ugly, silent crying for the first time since everything began. When he came that day I pointed at her breathing, trying to make my face say she's going to live. You did this. He looked at her for a long time. Then he sat down on his piece of broken wall and his shoulders dropped, not sadness, I think, but the specific exhaustion of someone who has been holding something tense and has been allowed, finally, to let it go. Then he stood up and did something that confused me. He didn't leave through the doorway. He walked to the window, what used to be a window, just an open gap in the one standing wall, and looked out at the road for a long time. I came to stand beside him and I looked too, and I saw what he saw, a truck, far off, moving slowly along the road. German. A patrol. He pulled me back from the window. He moved fast then quiet, practiced arranging the rubble near the doorway, pulling a long piece of collapsed roofing over the opening, reducing the visible space inside to a thin dark slit. He propped my mother further into the corner, behind shadow. He looked at me and held one finger to his lips. Then he went outside. I heard him. His boots on the road, moving toward the truck away from us, drawing attention away from us, and I heard voices in German, a brief exchange, laughter from the soldiers in the truck. Normal laughter. Nothing to see laughter. The truck moved on. He came back. He looked at us in the dimness to make sure we were whole. He nodded once. That was all. The last morning. On the 8th day he came earlier than usual. I could tell from the way he moved that something was different. He was carrying his full pack, not the half-empty bag he'd been arriving with, but everything. The weight of departure. He set down what he'd brought. More food than usual, as much as he could spare, I think, arranged carefully on a piece of cloth. His hands moved over it for a moment, checking, as though he was trying to make sure it was enough. As though he was trying to calculate how long it would last. He looked at my mother. She was sitting up, awake, almost herself again. He looked at her for a long time, the way you look at something you are memorizing, or something you are trying to say goodbye to without words. Then he looked at me. He reached into his coat pocket and brought out something small. He crossed the room the whole length of it, which wasn't far, and crouched down to my level and held it out. A small medal. Military, stamped with something. His name, maybe. A number. Something. I looked at it. He pressed it into my hand and closed my fingers over it. I looked up at him. His face was doing the same thing it had done that very first moment in the doorway, cracking along some invisible line, something shifting inside that couldn't shift back. He stood up. He walked to the doorway. And I did the only thing I could think of. I said the one word I knew he would understand. The one word that travels across every border and every language without needing translation. Merci, I said. Thank you. He stopped in the doorway with his back to us. He stood there for a moment that felt much longer than a moment. He didn't turn around. But I saw his head drop slightly, just slightly, the way it drops when something hits you somewhere you weren't guarding. Then he walked out. I ran to the window. I watched him on the road, getting smaller, pack on his back, rifle on his shoulder, walking in the direction the truck had gone the day before. The direction his war was waiting. I held the metal so tightly the edges cut into my palm. I never saw him again. My mother and I survived. We found help. We went on, the way people go on, carrying what can't be put down. I grew up. I married. I had a daughter and she had children, and those children have children now who run through my kitchen stealing biscuits and have no idea they owe their existence to a young man who lowered a rifle in a ruined farmhouse in November 1943. After the war I tried to find him. I had the medal, it was my one real lead, I thought. Numbers stamped on it, a symbol I couldn't read. I brought it to organizations, registries, offices of men with files. Every one of them told me the same thing: not enough information, too many men, too many records burned or missing or never kept. I still have the medal. It sits beside the window above my desk, next to a photograph of my grandchildren. Every morning when the light comes in at a certain angle it catches the medal, and for a second, just a second, I am 11 years old again in a ruined farmhouse, and a young man is pressing it into my hand and closing my fingers around it. Every morning I think, I never caught his name. Every morning I think, tell me his name. If you are reading this, if somewhere in Germany or Austria or wherever he was from, there is a son or daughter or grandchild of a young soldier who served in France in the autumn of 1943, who came home quieter than before, who could never quite explain a certain look he got sometimes, who kept something small and private locked inside him that he never talked about. It might have been us. Tell him the girl in the farmhouse remembered. That she is still here, 89 years old, sitting by a window. That every good thing in her life, every laugh, every grandchild, every ordinary morning grew from the 8 days he chose to be human inside a machine designed to make that impossible. Tell him I'm sorry I didn't catch his name. Tell him the bread was extraordinary. Tell him, please, if nothing else. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.